right. I'd like to welcome everybody this morning. I know it's a little early, but as Mike mentioned, we hope to give you all some retail therapy. So kind of want to keep this moving. So I will have the panelists come up and we'll kind of get the show started. So as they walk up, we have Artemio de la Vega with de la Vega Development. As Mike mentioned, he's pinch hitting for Terry Montesi today. We also have Eric Seitz with the Seitz Group, and we also have Tim Hughes with Falcon. So, let's get it started.
All right, Sam. All right. So we chose these guys because, quite frankly, Eric and Artemio and Terry are probably the three most active retail developers in the city right now in DFW. They've all been around for a long time, but right now they're probably the busiest. So I'll let Sam take it from here.
Yep. Again, I'm excited to be on this panel. One, with the esteemed panel that we have today. Also, I am a practicing member of the retail therapy community personally, and also a day job is retail at CBRE. So I'll have everybody give a quick introduction and we'll get into the program.
Artemio?
Yes, sir.
Introduce yourself.
Artemio de la Vega Capital.
Eric Seitz Group.
Tim Hughes, Falcon Realty Advisors. I've already introduced myself, you know me. I'm Terry Montesi.
So we'll just hop in kind of a general, and this could be a jump ball. What are the hottest topics right now that you're hearing on the retail side when you're having lunch or meet with clients or, going to events? Kind of, what are the hot button issues that you're hearing just in general?
I would say the availability of space. We represent a very, very long list of local, regional, and national retail brands, restaurant and entertainment brands, and wellness and fitness brands. And our biggest challenge is these two guys haven't put enough brick and mortar on the ground yet, but they're hard at it. And we're just really challenged to find space. And fortunately, all of our brands are active and very aggressive, but it's going to take a while to catch up on the supply side.
Anybody else?
Well, my personal experience, I would say that the challenge has been just dealing with construction costs, higher interest rates, and the environment that we're all subject to as of, past 12 months, 18 months. But, I'm sure you've all heard about, quality projects, and, when there's a reason for, when there's a good reason to build a project, and there's a market for it, then the rents will reward you. So it's all about really making sure that your projects are financially viable in this environment. So I would just say that good projects where you're checking the box and you're doing you're addressing a need in the community and you've done your homework on what does the community want? What's the ethos for the community and the lifestyle, and you're delivering on that. You're executing. You have a vision that where you have all of your strategies match the vision. It really becomes important. Like in McKinney, we feel that the citizens of McKinney really wanted a modern farmhouse type of architecture with. You have a lot of young families, so open space is important. Big patios. All of the programming and all of the things that you do that cost money, you really have to just execute, have a solid plan, a good team to make sure that you get there, and a good contractor. We've had a great experience with Micon, and we're very, very happy to be working with them. So, Eric?
I would second everything that Artemio said. I think there's a lot of headwinds still. Permitting is still a really big problem. Even when you get a deal, you've got to It takes forever to get through the permitting process. You have a lot of technical things to solve now with storm and sewer, and but we are blessed to be in the best market in the country, and we're in that rectangle where, you know, we have 125,000 net move-ins for DFW, and in that rectangle that spreads all the way from Farmersville to Decatur and down to 121, we're in this zone. You know, there are some great projects obviously out of it, but that's where the housing growth is, and obviously that leads everything for the type of service retail that I do. But deals are harder to put together. The interest rates are catastrophic at times. We hope they're dropping in the fall. Costs are up. They flatlined. They haven't gone down. So it's harder to bake the pie than it's ever been, you know. But like Artemio said, a good site that has all the analytics correct and is really wanted by the community, you can get it done. And we've been very blessed. We have 4 or 5 things, a couple under construction and 2 or 3 more getting ready to start. But we need to thank God that we are in, you know, the best market you could be in the country.
Do you guys see that we're building less shop space these days than we have in the past?
No.
More?
I think, you know, we're very selective on, anchors. If they don't have credit, if they're owned by private equity, we won't even touch them. We had a bad experience over the last 10 years with private equity buying retailers. The JLL guys can attest, the stuff we took out to market, it just sucked, honestly. And then you get some arrogant guy with great hair sitting in a cubicle telling you he can't give you financials anymore. So you did do a deal one way, it ends up being another. And so now credit quality, you know, in this environment, some of us old guys, remember when you had to have a takeout to be able to get a construction loan? You know, we started in the early 90s, and, you know, it's kind of gone back to that. So, but there's a discipline in that it forces you to have a great deal. You know, it's got to all work together, right? We're getting comments back from lenders. We haven't seen that in 20 years. So all of a sudden, it's gone back to the way it was. You can still get it done, but it forces discipline on making sure that your deal is really worth doing.
I think one of the things that Montesi was going to talk to was he's doing a number of deals with specialty grocers, and then there's either a junior anchor or there's a lifestyle piece to it. Tim, can you elaborate more on that? Because I don't really know what he was talking about.
Well, we're working on a couple with him. I can't disclose exactly where they are. We're not through the pipe. I do Whole Foods work in 4 states, and we work with Terry quite a bit. We did the Fort Worth development with him, and he loves working on Whole Foods mixed-use projects. And we're seeing the specialty grocer and the residential and the entertainment restaurant coexist in a much stronger way maybe than in the past. The challenge is solving for the parking and making sure nobody gets in our parking and gets in our way and gives us everything we want. And, you know, it's a typical grocery deal. But the excitement, same with Artemio's project. I mean, we've got a ton of restaurants, and we're fortunate to be working with him on the leasing on that, and a park setting and peripheral restaurants with big patios on the park. And, you know, it's led by the Whole Foods anchor and the demographic, psychographic that they draw to a project, which all the sheep like to follow that because they know we do a pretty deep dive vetting a site or vetting a trade area. So it's working really well. Sam?
Yeah, that kind of actually transitions, we have transitioned kind of into what I was wanting to discuss next, kind of the development side, what you're looking for in terms of your development, what's working, some of the challenges that you're facing. I know obviously construction costs, interest rates, things like that, but what do you see kind of the shining light in terms of, you know, your focus, either market-wise or just, you know, product type in terms of, you know, smaller retail or lifestyle centers?
You want to go?
Sure. I would say it really needs to, you know, the business plan needs to come together in terms of you need to have the traffic generator, and you need to have the business plan support, whether it's small or big. It could be small, or a small urban project. or it could be a larger project. If it's a good project, you always wish you had a bigger project built. But hopefully that answers your question.
Well, we talked about some of the problems. I mean, obviously, cost, interest rates, the availability of equity, construction debt is something we don't talk about a lot. It's really tough right now. The space is getting filled by some of the hated private equity people with equity and debt products, but but the pie still gets baked the same way. We do baseline yields with anchor tenants. That's why the credit's so important. We have to have good intersections that people can get in and out of well. So there's a lot of design things. We look to our engineers and architects to make sure that we can. The good news is all of these tenants are really set in what their prototype is. There's no guesswork anymore. The analytics are great. They know if they're going to make money. So it's kind of a paint by numbers deal, but it's no different than 25 years ago. It's basically, is it the right site? Does it have great visibility and access? And deals are getting bigger for me. You have to have frugal fashion, and you have to have restaurants and food and fitness and entertainment. So, in McKinney, we did 4 corners with the help of Tim Headington, who was our partner, and he owned them, and we JV'd with him. And the other thing is it showed me that as we try to do deals going forward, bigger is a little bit better because it drives all the information to you. In years gone by, we've known that there were 4 corners in play, and this guy's got it, and Frank's got it, and somebody else has got it, and it's, fairness among thieves, so to say. But it's hard now to do that, and you need that information to know, because you're spending so much money. I mean, you guys know how much pre-development we spend to do these deals. You got to have that information. So it's baseline yield, all the things that are basic to real estate, dealing with all these headwinds, and then, like I said, having that information flow because the pie is still baked the same way.
Let me ask you, give us, you can give it percentages, you can just talk broad numbers, but for the ordinary shop space, the outbuildings, last cycle we kind of had to be in that mid-30s rent range. Where do you need to be today? And same for the anchors.
In years gone by, there was always this rule that, you didn't want to, if you had a grocery store, you figured out which one it was, and if you had an Albertsons, you could do 20,000 feet. If you had a Whole Foods, you could do 40. But truthfully, the real yield in the project is switched. We did McKinney, and we did 4 corners. We had them all situated as a shopping center, and the market moved, and we realized that we were lucky that we had done so many shops buildings. 2, 3 tenant buildings, and the sum of the parts was less than the individual parts. So we had to take a step back, and we sold each of them off as individual pieces. And that, plus COVID with package pickup drive-throughs, we started shifting our parking requirements. So a lot more was to the front of the shops buildings. No more walking between alleys to get to a big field in the back. If it didn't park 10 to 1 up front, we don't do it because we realize that's really our bread and butter now. Shops really drive a project's profitability. Everything else, vent pads, but again, I'll take a shops building over a midline average, anchor tenant. You're just wasting your time and money because you have control over that shops building. If the mom and pop doesn't do well, you can get them out easier than fighting with some nice-haired guy in a cubicle, private equity, to get it back. So it's...
You might need some retail therapy.
Well, Tim asked me, and hell, I went bald at 18. Who knows, right? This is all I know.
Look, go back and just tell me, what's the difference in rents for those retail outbuildings today?
Well, I think he's killing it up the street from me, but in 1992, people told us we did Amarillo, you'll never get $24 a square foot on your shop space. You're smoking. And now we're getting 45. We're getting 50. And a lot of that depends on the tenant and if they want $100 or $50, and you do that dance with them. But you know what? I'd rather have somebody doing that, then I'm nervous about the anchors paying $22, $23, $24 for anchor boxes right now. You know, that's what keeps me up at night. It's not the pads paying $35, $40 or the shops paying $50. It's still the anchors, you know.
Because even at 24, it's not penciling out well.
No, I mean, you know, we built McKinney and we did a Marshalls and we paid $106 all in. We just priced one recently, and Alicia is my person, and she's like at $185, $190, and that's because I'm twisting her arm to get it down. But it's awful, you know. And the rent's going to be $18, so isn't that great? You got not quite enough to cover that increase in price. You better be making it up somewhere else, right?
I actually was a little stargaze as a former banker in construction finance. I heard you mention takeout. It's not a term that you hear too often, but kind of shift focus over on the other side in terms of brokerage. What are you doing? I mean, sometimes it's almost sticker shock. Those prices are going up, and especially new construction. And you have tenants moving down and, you know, some that are expanding, and you know, you have 30, 40 plus rents, plus, you know, triple nets. How are you working through that? What's that process like?
Well, for the first time, I think in my career, I've seen the junior boxes pay up. We represent Ross and Petco and others, and I mean, they've been at the same rent probably since Frank built a shopping center 25 years ago. I think Ross might have been the same rent that they were 2 years ago. Now, we're seeing them come up 20, 25% more in rent. To your point, Eric, it's wow, is this sustainable? And we're also seeing, now Whole Foods isn't, Artemio will attest to that. So will Eric. They just have a model and they just won't break it. And they've got a big gorilla overseeing everything they do that keeps them pretty restricted. But for the other shops, we're, to your point, 40, 50 plus in McKinney. We're seeing that across the board. Most of the brands we represent, I would say over half, we've brought into Texas from somewhere else. So when they're coming in from Miami or Canada or LA, 40, 50 bucks, that's not so bad. You know, $24 triple nets is a little tight. 15, 18 triple nets a little tough as well. But we're seeing the immigration here is so strong. Where we have 152,000 people move here last year alone, 350 a day, which is staggering. And I had a little list of retailers. I thought I'd just spit this off because I thought it was very compelling. This is from Change Store Age Executive. If you don't get it and you want to know a little more about retail, it's a great tenant informative. But Trader Joe's is opening 16. Ross is opening 90 plus in 2024. Target's opening over 300 over the next 10 years. Grocery Outlet is opening 15 to 20 this year. Aldi's opening more than 800 by 2028. BJ's is opening 12. Burlington's over 100 in 2024. Warby Parker over 40 in 24. Sprouts over 35 in 24. I can keep going on. And then this morning I just read Academy has announced 160 to 180 stores over the next 5 years. So retail's alive and well, and I guess they're figuring out a way to make, you know, the pricing work. But we're all stressed and strained by these crazy rents that I don't know if they're sustainable or not. For the mom and pop to pay $50, $55, $58, that's a lot of hair to cut. That's a lot of sandwiches to sell. That's a lot of fingernails to do. It's troubling, but I see it still sustaining. We still need more space for every client we have.
I don't know. You know, you and I are actually in the trenches building this stuff, and I think the biggest thing right now is construction debt. You know, it really, we're going out on 1.5 million square feet. That's 90% committed and will be leased by the time we close it in the fall. What scares me at night is yeah, the anchors are paying too much and all that, but the metrics are there. But the issue we don't control anymore, no matter how great this market is how big the deals have gotten and the equity component and what they're looking for. How are you going to structure your construction side? And then what are you going to do? You know, if you can't sell it at a reasonable cap, you better build it to own it. So that's another component. That's where you got to have a takeout, or you got to have some really deep, you know, pocketed investors that understand even better than you do what the market does. So we're getting ready to, we got this wave of stuff that's coming. You know, we're on the front end, there's more coming. And it's based on good metrics, but how are we going to actually close it and get it done? Because there's only so much cost you can take out. There's only so much you can push the rents. You still have to have a reasonable going in yield to make it work, but how long does all that take? And you know, in our business, time kills everything, and no news is not good news. So I think that's the component that keeps me awake at night, excited to do what we're doing, but it's the one component none of us can really gauge right now. Will rates drop 200 basis points by fall? I hope so, but we got to build it like maybe it won't. So anyway.
You know, we've seen very little retail development for the last 7 to 10 years. We're tracking somewhere close to 30 new deals that are grocer, either these are all grocer sites or discounter sites, Walmart, Target, just in DFW. And that's something we saw a lot in the early 2000s, you know, that number of active working deals, but that is probably a 4 or 5 year rollout maybe, in terms of, you know, how many of those open up. But, you know, over the last 10 years, our suburbs have been growing, and the retailers, the grocers weren't expanding. You know, Tom Thumb occasionally expanded more than anybody else, but, you know, we've got a huge demand to catch up on. And I think even, you know, we're saying DFW is 96% occupied today, which is crazy. They're saying it's 98% inside the LBJ loop. We were talking about how high the rents are in the suburbs or in the growth areas. We're just seeing, you know, we're seeing 80, 90. I'm working a deal on Knox at 125 a foot right now. Net. Yeah. Triple net at $20. So, you know, those numbers are going up too. And I do see sales. The sales are there to support it. So, yeah.
Which is crazy. I mean, I worked the deal over that way, 75, and yeah, we got above 100 a foot, and I mean, I think we had maybe 21 LOIs on the deal, which is insane.
And that settled in at what, 140 a foot? Is how we got to? Yeah.
Wow. Which is insane, and like you say, I mean, is it sustainable? And you know, beyond
I think a lot of people are looking, coming from other cities where that's like a bargain.
Yep.
You know, and they're buying properties at $400 or $500 a square foot built, or $700 a foot built, and they're coming out of, like I said, LA, San Fran, Chicago, Detroit, New York, Miami. I think Dallas has finally reached maybe a level of recognition and size that, you know, we're playing with the big boy real estate communities now. So maybe that's what's driving a lot of this, and it'll be worked out just fine. But it's still a lot of stuff to sell out of a lot of space spread around. We have a lot of restaurants come in and they want to do 65, 75, 8,500 square feet. And we're like, that's a lot, man. That's a lot. You've got 27 restaurants on these four corners. You really think you can do 7 million? And, oh, yeah, we do that in here, we do that there. And we try to coach them. You might want to do 55 to 65 and be glad at that pencils. And I think we're seeing now some shaving of sizes. I mean, even Whole Foods now has a 35.5 prototype that they're playing with. They have a 10 to 12 in Manhattan. They won't do that here. But we're seeing a lot of our restaurants start to shave down and get right-sized. And I think we'll see the retail juniors probably embark on that pretty quick, too.
Yeah. Luckily, us Texans aren't shy about or bashful about eating, so.
No. So
Eric's point about debt and expectations of takeout and so on, you know, I think he's spot on. You know, we always we feel that you really need to have flexibility, enough flexibility built in on your projects too. And I like to really just always say, look, you know, hope for the best, but expect the worst. And if you have enough flexibility to deal with that range, then, you know, and really what that means is don't over leverage, because you don't know what's going to happen down the road. You know, the market and interest rates, for me at least, always tend to do the opposite of what I think they're going to do. And so, who knows what's coming, you know, and, but you really just need to, you need to have that contingency in your plan.
Since this is retail therapy, I'll just kind of give another general question, if I can jump in. What excites you about the market from a retail standpoint, just real estate in general? What are you looking forward to think that's something that's exciting?
I think for the first time, we're not getting pushback. You know, I spoke earlier about you have to have a mixture of different uses. And I can remember the days that if you asked a grocery store, well, can I put a fitness deal in? They'd look at you like you cussed in front of their wife or something. It's like, no, but now those pieces all fit, and you can actually ask, some of these people what they want, and they're okay. Now, they don't want it right next to them, right? You got to fight that thing with them, but all these pieces are starting to, people are understanding that they have to work together and fit together. Doesn't make it any easier, but there's things you can do within a property now that make more sense. And we've gotten away from the stupid stacking and all the things that, no disrespect to planners out there, but some of this stuff just never worked. And we're kind of gotten away from that. Now we're back to some basic metrics. And I think that's what Hard Times does. It forces people to take those, really great but crazy ideas, and you kind of have to put them aside. So you get back to metrics. Your ponds are amenities now. You don't stack buildings. You try to create a sense of place, whatever that means to you. But now things fit together better, and that helps us. Doesn't help with some of the hard parts that we just talked about, but we can fit things together a little easier. So anyway.
Well, don't you think especially the lending community, but also the juniors, where restaurants were a necessary evil, put them over there, keep them away. Now they recognize post-COVID, wow, that's an anchor's anchor. I mean, that's our traffic generator. It's become much more compatible co-tenancy and still don't disrupt our parking, but we love seeing a lot more restaurants.
One last thing, I'm hogging but for the first time in 25 years, we actually have the ability to tell an anchor tenant no. And that is a thing of beauty. I've raised 4 girls, and I tell them, the best thing you have for yourself is you can say no. And it's a great thing. We're now able to tell these tenants, no, I'm not going to do your deal. Well, what do you mean you're not going to do it? I don't need to do your deal. I don't want to do your deal. I'd rather do a shops building instead of doing an average anchor deal. Well, what about your draw? No, the restaurants and the shops and some of these other people will make up for losing you. So they've all come back to the table with an understanding that it's food and it's fashion, it's entertainment, it's fitness, it's all those things. And that's probably the biggest sea change I've seen over the last few years, which is really helping. It's helping.
We don't like hearing that.
Yeah, I was gonna, that's why I'm sitting here in the middle.
He's setting me up for a conversation later, or what the hell?
Artemio, what excites you? What's something that's exciting to you in our world these days?
Well, I think more that just like Eric said, it's really exciting to create people places and places where people can gather and stay. I think long gone are the days where you plan a center so that you can get people in and out as efficiently and as quickly as possible. With big parking lots, a lot of concrete, get them in and out efficiently and quickly. And I think now we want to keep people in. We want them to come and we want them to stay. And so you do that by providing amenities and gathering spaces and things that will make it interesting and enjoyable and give people more than just a shopping experience. Give them help them to connect and have a family experience and socialize and just stay longer. And that's really cool to just watch it, happen. And you see that happening throughout Dallas, Fort Worth more and more. And it's really exciting. I mean, there's some really, really cool projects all over the city that we're witnessing.
You might speak to the park element that you're doing on both projects and what that's done to rents and just the embracement of the whole community, both infill urban as well as the suburban grocery anchored center for the park. So it'd be something worthwhile.
Yeah, and the park, I think what's really meaningful is that, you try to do something with an open space where you activate it, where you have activity, because, we talk a lot about parks, but do you really just want you don't want a park with a lawn that looks like a pasture, it's just another pasture with no people in it. So what can you do to have, activity and make that a dynamic social place? What do you do during the weekdays? What do you do, in the mornings? The way that you combine the different uses to create that dynamic environment that we all want is really important. So it's a part of your design process and the type of tenants that you bring in.
We ding the planning and everybody else, but I think cities are starting to help with this idea of place too, which, in McKinney on our project, we're working on phase 6. And one of the cool things that, and I would have been a heretic speaking this a few years ago, but, we're looking at a retail incubator concept. And I got the idea when I went to ASU where my daughter went to school, and there was a combination food store, restaurant incubator. And it was really cool. And then I thought, well, that's pretty cool. So I went over to Florida and went to Winter Park, and they had kind of the same thing. But a lot of cities are looking for ways to do something that creates a uniqueness. And you can't put it in every project, but sometimes you can figure it out, and if the cities will help you. So we're kind of working on a 20,000 square foot box that has little vignettes inside the box. It has a ghost kitchen and some restaurants in the back. And, the EDC's, oh gosh, this is great, a little couple of spaces, food trucks. And I think that's kind of that whole new thing. Younger generation is looking for things, they see other places, and they want to see that here. And like Artemio's projects, he's got 2 really cool ones, and they've got that ability to add that space. But I think as we go forward with retail and we catch up, we're going to have to continue to recognize that millennials and even the younger ones are going to want stuff like that, And the cities are looking for something different. We were in Edmond last week, and we told them we had another Ross, and they were because everybody thinks they're at the greatest place, and he was whining about it, but we finally convinced him it'd be okay. Because you got to have people that come into the center, right? My wife's a TJ person. Holy crap, twice a week. It's like, you go to the grocery store, Eric, twice a week. I'm going to TJ. So, and I got 4 girls, and hell, they all go now. So,
what was the term you used for the discount? What was the
frugal fashion?
Frugal fashion, yeah. Frugal fashion. I'd never heard that.
Yeah, and I stole it from somebody else. Believe me, I'm not that creative. So, and that's what we do. We steal concepts. We steal ideas. We're all in this room trying to figure out how we can do it right and better, and we're stealing things.
I like to say we share, we collaborate. And we
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
But you're the nicest guy on this panel.
You embrace all the...
You sound like a pirate.
He is the nicest guy. But we first got started 35 years ago. We used to sit on my porch over on Druid and dream about how great we were going to be. We had no idea. We were both scared to shit. I mean, it was like, okay, let's go. But he is the nicest guy in town.
Question and answer?
Yeah.
Q&A? I think
Q&A.
we'll open it up for a little Q&A.
Tall guy in the back. Okay, Tom.
I
The
don't
lower
think that...
volume one.
Yeah, really?
The lower volume one.
I don't think that merger is going through, though.
I agree. I don't think it'll happen.
Everybody's saying that's not going to happen, but
Got a different take on it.
Yeah.
If you look at the grocery guys, and we're just now we pretty much stayed boxes, but we're doing quite a bit of grocery now. You look at a Tom Thumb, it was the leader here for a long time. And then they made a couple of missteps. Biggest one was, Boar's Head. Okay, so then everybody went to Kroger. But I think there's room for, I've thought about the Kroger merger. I think there's room for it. But it's like, will they be smart enough to figure out that you need the 140, but you need a 50, and you need a discount one. And where do you put those? As these neighborhoods grow in all these outlying markets, where do you put a 50? You put a Tom Thumb in a 50 that kind of plunks down. But I'm not sure they're looking at that. I think it's just, how do we gobble up market share, reduce cost, and...
I think history shows that the bigger the company, the more out of touch they are with the customer.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing it right. Back table 11.
I think we can all see that there's been a little bit of a shift in capital towards retail, especially on the lending side. They're not really wanting to touch office. They like multifamily still, but a lot of banks have kind of hit limits there, and they're willing to look at retail because it's been underbuilt recently. But from a capital standpoint, not just debt, but also equity, is there a focus within retail where they want to be more in like single tenant, the smaller unanchored strips, shop centers versus grocery anchor versus some of these larger lifestyle centers, and then obviously malls, which are either really great or really terrible, and there's not really an in-between. Are you guys seeing a focus on a specific sector within?
You know, I'd say to respond to that, Bert Crouch at Invesco, he and I were talking a week or two ago, and he was saying that the pension funds are looking at retail favorable again, and a year ago he said he'd get fired if he even recommended a retail deal, but he said that their allocation to retail has been typically 5%, and they're doubling that to 10%, but the pension fund stuff is typically has to be perfect world retail with the best grocer, and it still leaves a lot of room for equity to invest. And we know there's still a tremendous amount of money looking to go somewhere. And even on the few properties that are selling right now that are bigger, there's still an amazing kind of fight for these properties. We just saw one where the final three bidders were bettering their own offers without being prompted, and offering $500,000 hard. And so the bigger an asset is, the more that equity tracks to it. What do you guys see? How about equity interested in being providing your equity for development?
I think there's plenty of equity. I think the debt side's the hardest nut to crack right now. You know, when you walk in and say you got a $100 million deal and you're going to put $30 million in as equity or 35, you still got a construction loan of 65 or 70 million. And a lot of banks are full up here because they overdid multifamily. I don't think they're going to, have problems with those multifamily loans. Most of it's here, but that's a big loan. Typical retail deal in the past might have been a loan of 25, 30, 35. Well, now they've almost doubled. And so you can get the equity because the returns are there, but I still think it's the debt. And that is the one thing we've got to figure out over the next 6 months. That'll be the gas, that helps all this get built. But that's really where I see it.
All right.
You've mentioned about the restaurants and them actually being considered as a junior anchor. How sustainable do you see that trend being in the future?
Well, I don't know that they're a junior anchor, but I think the anchors since COVID have recognized the importance of restaurants versus they've been seen more as a nuisance, and they should be far away and don't get too many. And I think you all have, as developers, have been certainly much more embracing of the energy that the restaurants create, keeps people on site longer, keeps that stay in my project for a lot longer period of time by creating more than a fast food drive-through. I'm speaking more to the casual dining. And
I think you could say that on any economic level, that the restaurants are really important.
Yeah, true.
That's Hispanic directed shopping centers, whether that's lifestyle or specialty retail. The restaurant is a big part because it's often where people create those experiences and have those memories. And again, the old paradigm of developers and property owners is that they thought restaurants were bad, and now we see restaurants critical to bringing the traffic, and the tenants do too, right?
Yeah, well, property taxes is the biggest surprise and sticker shock when brands come in from out of state and they see the rents at 48 or 52 and they start to run their numbers, and then we hit them with a $12, $15, $22 triple net, and boy, their eyes pop out. And that's not something that's manageable. You know, the rent, we know what that's going to be. And you can fight the taxes, even though residential taxes came down on residential, but, you know, where's that going to go? CAM charges, you know, people are nervous because of the weather we've had the past couple of years. We had snow, we had drought. That's not a controllable. So it's a challenge, and it's a very worrisome challenge for the tenant side, and I know it's not something they can necessarily control, but curious if you are doing something to fight that or offset that.
We're always contesting taxes, but it is, you know, to Frank's point, it's certainly an issue, and it's more concerning if it continues to grow, and there's always that appetite, you know, from the chief central appraiser to just keep pushing the numbers up and show up with a bigger budget, you know. So,
Well, and there's a fallacy that Texas has no income taxes. We just have done a really good job hiding it in a lot of ways. Property tax is a great example. We're up in Edmond working on a deal. Their property tax is $2, but they have the state income tax. So the state's more involved in things, incentives, and everything else. But we quoted a tenant the other day, $8, and it was an anchor, and they were like, what are you talking about? But that's what it's going to be. The other thing, the quiet secret in the room, is when you sell it, and you finally make some money after 3 or 4 years, and the guys who's buying it's having sticker shock because now the taxes that are in the lease that have been the last year $8 are now going to 12 or 13. And these are big things that as a state we're going to have to deal with. It doesn't get a lot of discussion, but we charge a lot in fees. All of us out there know Texas doesn't have a state income tax, but we pay a lot on property taxes, fees, franchise taxes. I mean, where'd they come up with that? You know, on top of everything else, right? So it's just, we're playing smoke and mirrors with some of these things. It will come home to roost. You can only create false narratives and false facts for so long until you have to deal with it. And we're laying it off to our younger people. They're going to have to deal with this stuff. And there are some headwinds down the road that we're going to have to think about.
Thank you. Thank you for the conversation, gentlemen. I'm curious, and I'm sure a lot of people in here are curious about really on the innovation aspects of this industry, especially with AI. And I was curious to pose the question of how do y'all assess maybe investments within technology in terms of either site selection, utilizing AI, and are there any drawbacks to investments in AI for cases like site selection or best case fit for proposed building?
I think one of the greatest tools that has come into our business is Placer AI. It really gleans a lot of information on the customer. So anybody inside a store, the Marshall store, you can find out where they were before they went to that store, where did they go after that store, and where does their phone sleep? So basically where they live. So there's a ton of information you can glean from that. There are also some holes in that can be misleading. There's still a lot of room to try to improve, construction. We haven't evolved that much, and retail doesn't, because spaces are individually metered and things like that. Solar doesn't really play a role in what we do. But there is a lot of technology that is on the early stages of being developed that are going to be much more greener. Locking carbon dioxide into concrete is something that they were just talking about, but now it's being done on in scaling. So eventually that'll get to a place where it's really affordable to do. I think trying to use more of what we've got and not just tear things down and rebuild them is also responsible.
It's hard to get. I like the renewables part, and for years we've had some technologies that could really work, like solar film. You can actually take this big expanse of tilt wall panel and you can put a solar film on it. But try to talk to these retailers about these renewable issues and the shade pulls down. I would suggest that they do more with it in places like Hawaii or in New Jersey and maybe California, but they're changing the rules. You could do net metering, and so there were incentives to do things to allow for this technology, particularly with solar. Batteries are a lot better now. I mean, theoretically, you could capture, the biggest waste for me all these years is we build the sea of parking, and all it does is sit there and collect heat. Wouldn't it be cool if some smart guy in this room, probably younger, figured out how you could put a diode in there and capture all that heat? But then you got to put it in a battery, right? Well, there's a newsletter I get called Canary Media that speaks only to what all these amazingly smart young people are doing across the world. And it really speaks to batteries and helium and hydrogen and what's coming. And I don't know their industry really understands it's coming. And it's going back to what these millennials are going to want. They're going to want that. There's going to be a time when lenders and people are different. All of us old guys are going to go away, and there's going to be these young faces saying, "Well, what are you doing? Politically, you can't do SEL and you can't do DEI and all this. That's going to fade too. But pretty soon it's going to be really practical. What are you doing to create this change?" And it's there. I mean, but try to talk to Ross about putting solar panels on the roof, right? I mean,
And I think from the brokerage standpoint, I think out of the 4 kind of major food groups in terms of commercial real estate, I think on the retail side, we probably deal with demographics, analytics, probably more deeply because, so much is dependent on where you're located, where your customers are. So, it's been fascinating the amount of data that we can capture and provide. And I think initially it was, hey, this is giving us a leg up and we're standing out in the crowd. Now it's almost mandatory that I see that you have to have some type of presentation from a data standpoint and not just, anecdotally or, just basic traffic counts.
Yeah. That was a great question. I think, AI is here to stay and technology, and I think we're seeing a lot of that play in with retailers as they, personalize and customize shopper experiences with AI, and they manage their supply chains and inventory and trying to be as efficient with in and out as possible, and AI plays a big role. Purchasing and on social media, creating customer experiences. It's just all integrated. I feel like it's really here to stay, and I see retailers really embracing and moving forward with AI. So it's a great question, and it's something that we really need to pay attention to. It's evolving.
It's moving so fast. We had somebody come speak at one of our events on AI, and there's so much out there you can get down a rabbit hole on, and it's moving quickly. Tomorrow it's something newer than it was today, but we've been real fortunate. We've got some super robust data and research tools in our office that our clients have come to absolutely demand, if not expect. And Whole Foods loves it. They want it on a national level because it's Placer plus a half a dozen more technologies that our in-house Sky Van Piazza is integrated into this great web-based presentation. But now it's like, okay, what's next? Well, what else you got? And we're constantly trying to improve and grow that, because whether it's restaurants or Whole Foods, we're getting into this psychographic technology. It's not just people and bodies and circles. They want to know exactly what kind of person is and what are they eating, and what the psychographic was always a Whole Foods directive, and they require that because they know who their customer is at a very surgical level, and it makes it hard to pick sites. That's why we don't have as many stores as H-E-B, but they do a great job, and we're seeing the millennial and more so the Gen Z is positioned to want more out of retail and restaurant than just stuff. They want to know where it came from. They want to know who made it. They want to know where the product was grown. They want to know how the animal was slaughtered. They want to know, everything about it is a story that supports their belief system, and they're demanding that as well.
I think, speaking from this side of the panel, I think we want to make sure also that AI won't be replacing brokers.
No, they can't do it. Somebody's got to turn it on and off.
There you go. There you go.
We're bumping up against 9 o'clock. I think wanted to thank you all for being part of this today, and thank you all for coming. And